Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's edition of Coffee Talk. My name is Mariah Kindle, and I'm the Executive Witch here at Liminal Magic Events and your host for the Witches Education Conference coming up in Seattle on Beltane weekend, so May 2nd and 3rd, 2020. Today, our guest is Theresa Carmody. She is an empath, a witch, storyteller, and a healer. She is the owner of Elemental Journeys in Portland, Oregon, and I am very thrilled to introduce her to you today, and we'll have a little bit of a chat with Theresa. Hi, Theresa. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Mariah. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and to try to share a little bit about myself.
Well, that's a good place to start, because I wanted to ask you to talk a little bit about who you are, what tradition or what path you follow, and how long you have been practicing.
Well, the how long is always a tricky question for me because, my experience of my own life and my own path is that it's been an ongoing unfoldment. And so where does it begin is kind of an arbitrary thing. But I can tell you a little bit about how I arrived where I'm at, which is I was always a highly sensitive child and an empath, and the world kind of indoctrinated me into a certain tradition that I remember always feeling and asking the question at the back of my head, I believe there's more than this. And I want to know what that more is. I had no idea the kind of rocky road that question was going to take me down. But I had 16 years of night terrors. And there were beings that I think that were trying to wake me up to the fact that I had been indoctrinated and that I needed to wake up from that. And for me, after the 16 years, I really sought a lot of different healing professionals trying to make sense of that. It was very much a confusing time. And I happened to stumble across this Hungarian shaman about 20 years after the first night terror. And she shared with me the way of journeying. And she did it without teaching me her tradition. She taught me her tool. And so with that tool, I was able to journey myself and work with my own psyche, my own spirituality, and the beings who have been coming to me, and really find a way of partnering with them and integrating that experience and awakening into my own path. So, my own heritage is I'm Irish, English, and French, so pretty Celtic. And eventually what happened as I would journey further and further and further is that part of me started to meet me in the journey experience and initiate me into my own path. I'm not, I don't try to reclaim things so much because I think I live in a different time. And so I like my heritage to inform me, but I'm also well aware that I'm a native to this land, and this land has medicine and magic of its own, and it's influenced me. So I kind of walk a path of my experience.
I love the way that you said that you walk a path of your experience. And I truly believe that as much as we want to connect with our heritage, connect with our ancestors, connect with our distant past, I also think it's important to connect with the time and place and space where you are right now. So completely.
Yeah, and the path has been pretty twisted and turny and wandering and lost and all those things. And for me, I think that, my business name is Elemental Journeys. I practice elemental magic. I practice a Celtic shamanism. To me, those are containers that allow me to both connect deeply to my own roots and to connect to my present, where I am now, what magic looks like now. So there are many things that I think inform my path, and I don't think I have one particular label for it.
One of my favorite ways to describe that is a curated path. So
Yes.
a collection of knowledge and teachings and tools that we have gathered over time.
Yes.
One of the reasons why I think the Witches Education Conference is so important is because we've come together, we're bringing together a very diverse group of people so that we can continue to curate our path and move forward with a collection of new information and new tools that we may not have had before.
Yeah, I actually think that that was, for me, one of the biggest lessons of the night terrors was that it's not about uh, a tradition claiming me. It's about me finding who I am and letting my own experience kind of form my path as I'm practicing.
Mm-hmm.
And I always learn new things, and I love hearing from different people who have different experiences, because sometimes what that does is challenge something I believe that isn't really functional anymore. Sometimes what it does is it just shifts my perspective in a way that a tool or a practice I've been using for a very long time opens up a whole new realm of how to use it. Yeah.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
So you have agreed to teach, I think, 4 classes at
Right.
the Witches Education Conference,
Mm-hmm.
and you're teaching on both May 2nd and May 3rd.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about the classes or courses that you'll be offering to this audience?
Sure. I am teaching on 2 topics at 2 different experience levels. So I'm teaching about the Wheel of the Year, both an introductory course and a more advanced course. And that to me is, it's what grounds me. The Wheel of the Year is what grounds me. It comes from a place of when we lived in more indigenous ways and agriculturally. And so for me, it's not so much about that. It's about trying to tap into, if I don't live that lifestyle, what is still the truth of that? And I find um, that the elemental shifts of the seasonal wheel of the year help me align with the contextual energy and find where that is within me to connect and create magic. So I'll be talking a little bit about the 8 Sabbats, the elements that are associated with them, and how I engage with them in my own practice. In the introductory level, I'll really be trying to describe the Wheel of the Year, which can be incredibly complex, in some fundamental ways that hopefully will give people many different access points to starting a practice of their own and finding the wisdom for themselves. In the advanced course, I will be sharing more of a deeper level of how to shift perspectives within the wheel and create more complex magic.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to go on to the left-hand path, but if you have questions or anything about the wheel, I want to ask that or answer that first before I move on.
One of my, as I've kind of curated my own path, it has become much more clear that the Wheel of the Year is not just a single Sabbath, but it is an actual season, and to embrace the seasonal elements of that particular time. So I'm really excited about those lectures for sure. And then
Yeah.
you are teaching on the left-hand path, which I think is something that is an important subject matter,
Mm-hmm.
given the growth and expansion of the attraction to Wicca, the attraction to shamanism, and really, I'm trying to collect my thoughts a little bit, but really,
Mm-hmm.
I think this is an important thing to discuss because so much of the introduction into these paths is very watered down. And so having a deeper conversation about magic on all sides,
Yes.
I think is very important. So talk a little bit about those two classes.
Okay, so the left-hand path for me is traditionally called Black Magic. I think we have too much societal energy in calling something white or black, because I think we have too much duality about those things equaling good and evil. And I do not believe that black magic or the left-hand path is evil. As a matter of fact, I think whether we consciously practice it or not, we are practicing it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think usually it's unconscious, but there is no way to live without also participating in chaos and destruction. It's part of our life. Even just eating, you're consuming something is dying for you to live. And so I feel very passionate about wanting to take away the stigma of the left-hand path, help people know how to feel safe with it, help people to know how when you join hands, you have potent magic. And that working with left-hand path can still follow the do no harm. Although even that rule I'll be challenging and poking at a little bit. So in the introductory class, I'll really be talking probably a little bit more theoretically or philosophically, because I think our belief systems are where we need to kind of begin to challenge and expand our beliefs in order to embrace the left-hand path. And then I think with the more advanced, there are questions for me that I held because of how I was acculturated that require me to really ask a lot of questions about what does integrity look like when you're doing something destructive or when you are aligning with chaos. And so the intermediate or advanced level one will be much more practical in terms of how do you actually practice this? How do you weave it into both hands? How does that integrated magic then also weave into the contextual of the Wheel of the Year? So for me, the two classes, the two different subject matters that I'm teaching actually really integrate very well, and you'll probably hear a little bit of both in each class.
What I like about this class or this series of classes, well, first, you're doing them. And I like the idea of becoming whole, of bringing all of the parts together to create a whole and growing practice, for sure.
Yes. Well, my background is in psychology, and I was trained in systems theory, which is the idea that everything is connected, and that just because it's connected doesn't make it the same. And so how to build those relationships, how to recognize when it is time to let go of something, how to recognize when to bond with something. And so I see it as a very organic life form. In fact, Ken Edwards, Runewalker, and I do a podcast called Web of Resonance. And that's kind of the whole purpose of the podcast, is that he and I are coming from different traditions. We use our divination tools to kind of look at what is the contextual reality that our traditions just help us have an access point to. And then where are they speaking similar wisdom? And that doesn't mean it's the same. I think difference and diversity needs to be honored and respected. And I think that there is still a point to be able to have a common language around realities that we access in different ways.
So it's nice that you brought up the Web of Resonance, because you and Ken Edwards are doing a live version
Yes, we.
a resonance at the Witches Education Conference. So I've been following the Web of Resonance for a while, and I
Great.
love it.
Thank you.
So talk a little bit about how you guys came up with the idea to do this, and what's it going to look like in a live class to do this?
Okay. Well, the way we came up with doing it is, Ken used to be the owner of Blue Antler in Utah, and I would come out and do some rituals and classes, and we knew each other from before he moved. So we would just hang out and talk about things, and we realized that we had a lot that we felt we wanted to say. Um, and it kind of morphed into we took a leap of faith. Really, we knew we wanted to do a podcast and share some of that, and we were willing to let the experience teach us what we actually wanted to do. And so the podcast really is about, we come together and we drum, and then we try to find a common intention and use our different tools and talk about what the tools tell us about that intention. So what you'll see at the conference is very much that. Because it's a live taping and there will be a live audience, I'm sure that Ken and I will really want to take advantage of the fact that people may have questions that they want to ask. And I think we're both really looking forward to the opportunity to have it be very interactive.
I really love the idea of the interactive podcast. So hopefully that will, I've left that one for the end of the day, so you can have a lot of time to produce that.
Yeah.
So one of the other things, and I've really loved how this has come together so far, in that everyone I reached out to, everybody who wanted to be a speaker, was very excited to come in and do something like this. And I have selected people from various traditions, various backgrounds, various paths, and really love the diversity of this conference. How do you think this diversity, or how important do you think this diversity is in as we move forward and kind of curate our own paths?
I think it's essential. In fact, I think when you ignore diversity, you distort reality. And so for me, the way that I like to think of it is, if I were going to build a house and I asked friends and community to come help me build my house, and they all brought a hammer because we're of the same culture and so we have the same tool, we could certainly build a house with a hammer. It would probably take longer and it probably wouldn't look as nice as if people come to join me who bring different perspectives, different approaches, different tools. And when you work with people who understand the tools that they have, understand the perspective that they have, and work together for a common purpose, that's really potent magic. So I think common intention is important. It's what allows diversity to have its strength.
And I think it is the common intention of the
Yeah.
speakers coming together, really with the idea to give people very very different tools, but really foundational like knowledge that they can build from throughout
Yeah.
a couple of days.
Yeah, well, there's that old saying, all roads lead to Rome. Now that was kind of a, a civilization that believed they were the center of the world. But I do think that there were many paths that led there. And I think when you're talking about magic, there's no one destination. And yet, as we walk our paths, there's so much commonality, I find, between people who walk a certain path, that they will often share a common perspective or common experiences that they may have more in common than from the cultures they originate from. So mystics of many different cultures share things that they do not necessarily share with their culture of origin. And I think that just the experience of walking in a magical way, seeing the wonder of the world, that already gives us a thread in common that's pretty potent then to weave our diversity in and be able to expand each of our individual perspectives.
Mm-hmm. Completely agree.
Yeah.
One of the things this adventure has brought has been a crossing of paths. So as we all kind of meander, as we all kind of walk that winding path, we get the opportunity to connect with one another and learn and grow together, creating a larger community, which is absolutely a phenomenal experience. So as we get ready, we head into this conference. What are the things that you are looking forward to as a participant or as a speaker at the conference?
Well, I'll start with as a speaker. As a speaker, I have taught these classes before. I've often taught them in venues or to communities that were pretty diverse. And so a lot of the people that I've worked with have not come from a magical background, do not claim Wicca, witchcraft as their path. And so for me, there's a lot of what has been necessary in those teachings is to really talk about the perspective that I'm coming to the magic with. I'm really looking forward to being able to talk with a bunch of witches and not feel like I have to in any way, I think, try to share that this is an important path. I think people who are coming are already there. So for me, it gives me the opportunity to go even deeper in what I think that I can share and teach and experience. As a participant, I'm really looking forward to going to some other classes and to hearing some other people. Of course, because Ken and I work together a lot, I can't wait to go to his classes, and he's got some juicy ones. So I think that'll be fun. And just kind of connecting more with the witchy community, I think is what I'm looking forward to most. Yeah.
That is the idea really behind the conference, is coming together and learning and growing and creating that community, right?
Yeah.
I love the idea of the richness and the deepness of the conversations we can have really openly, because we are all coming together to learn from one another. So with, kind of a similarity of a starting point.
Yeah, I will say it, I claim the title witch. I do that in things that are public and ways that I promote myself. And it's actually been quite surprising to me how much there is still ignorance about what that means.
Mm-hmm.
And so to be coming to a community that has doesn't come from that place, even in the other world of performance that I do, when people hear I'm a witch, I get a lot of stereotypical, the broom and the black hat and all of that, and those things aren't not true. They just tend to be really superficial about what it means to be a witch. And so I think when you're speaking to other witches, there's a camaraderie about how, though we're not exactly in hiding anymore, we're also not well known.
Right. I agree.
Yeah.
Really.
And so being able to talk to people at a depth about how profound magic really is, it's not a fantasy, magical child syndrome. There's really a lot of profound, deep wisdom to it, and having an audience that conversation can happen, I'm really excited about.
I think too that a lot of the people who may be attending, a lot of the speakers also do quite a bit of online teaching. So there's a lot of
Mhm.
online interaction, and that has a place, and it's
Mhm.
definitely allowed for kind of a proliferation of the understanding of both witchcraft and chaos magic and the two-handed path. But it's also, what I'm also seeing is that there is incomplete stories
Yes.
in that community. And so the value of this in-person connection for me, I, I don't think I can understate. I mean, I think it's highly valuable.
Yeah. Well, I think, most traditions have some kind of process of someone being initiated, either by their choice or spirit calls them. And that, there are many myths around guardians at the gate, that if you want to go further and deeper, there are. There are challenges that you must meet, and you must grow, and you must gain maturity in order to go deeper. And so I think that, um, like I said, this conference is for people who have been initiated. And so there are certain mysteries that you have to have walked on a certain path long enough to be able to have access to. And to me, that's the opportunity. That's not something that gets shared for me online or when I'm doing different kind of things. It's more introductory, a little more superficial. Um, and there's nothing wrong with that. Everybody has to enter someplace, right? But this is about, for those who've already entered the path, really going deep and exploring the roots. And for me, when you grow the roots and tend to the roots, you also give your branches greater support to be able to reach and expand higher and deeper at the same time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That is brilliant. So I think that's about all the time that we have for this morning. Thank you so very much for joining us today. I can tell you that I am looking forward to seeing everybody in person in the
Hmm.
same room, so that we can share these deep and rich conversations.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you so much. This was a fun opportunity.
Great. Thank you. And I will catch you soon, and we'll stay updated on the conference. We'll make sure our audience has all the information they need so that they can enjoy as much of the conference as possible. Thank,
Yes.
thank you, Theresa, so very much. And I will catch you very soon.
Thank you, Mariah.